Let me get everything going. Okay, so we are on. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for joining the Royalty Exchange office hour session. We hold these now monthly. We were doing them weekly for a while, but now we're doing them on a monthly basis to answer everyone's questions, whether you're a new investor or a veteran investor on the platform. My name is Anthony Bruno. I am the Director of Communications. And here with me today are Rob Bernard, our Chief Counsel. I think I change your title every time. He's just basically our lawyer. And then also we have Ryan O'Connor. He is our financial analyst, and he does a lot of work with the assets that we trade in here on the platform. So we are your panel today. So let's see here, a couple quick housekeeping items. First of all, this is an open Q&A session. What we do is we tend to start the session off with a little bit of conversation around a particular topic that we identified earlier as being of interest. Then we will go to answering any questions that were left in advance when you registered, and we'll answer all of those. And then we will get to the Q&A that you could submit live during this call. Now, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A sort of tab. And if you select that, you can type in your questions, and we will see them here, and we will address all of them. We are committed to answering all the questions that you guys ask over the course of the time that we have today. And if we have to go over, we will go over. That's fine, although I don't anticipate that being necessary. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I think today, the topic that we wanted to start off with was to briefly address some of the more recent updates that have gone live on the site, some new features and some other things that were added. And so what I'll start with is sort of, I think, the most recent and also one of the more impactful updates is the fact that we expanded the ability to leave what we call standing orders to all investors. Okay, now standing orders was a feature that was, until I think just 2 weeks ago, something that only our all access investor members were able to do. And now we've expanded it on a little bit of a limited basis to all investors. And what it basically does is it allows you to place orders for automated investing. I'm going to go ahead and try to share a screen here so you kind of see what I'm talking about. If you give me 1 second, here we go. You should see this. This is a blog post, an article that we wrote about what we introduced, basically. So this is automated investing. And what this basically does is that it allows you to leave a standing order based on certain basic criteria that you're looking for in the assets you look to acquire. And when those orders are sort of left within the system, we automatically match those orders to assets as they come into our platform that meet your criteria. All right. Real quickly, and again, if you have questions, please type them in, but I'm going to kind of give you the basic overview, is we limit the catalogs that are eligible for this matching based on these criteria here. Ryan, jump in if I mess any of this up. All right. So basically, the criteria is that the asset must have a dollar age of 3 years or greater. It must have a last 12 months earnings of at least $1,000 and an adjusted trend rate of, and this is where I messed this up, Ryan, so tell me if I get it wrong, adjusted trend rate of no less than -5% annually. Can you maybe just jump into that trend rate part, because I always
yeah, so it's just got to be -5% or greater. So -4%, +5%. So anything above that -5% floor. And that, again, that adjusted trend is there's just some filtering done on that to filter out things that are, say, non-reoccurring or maybe outside the normal cash flow that you would expect to receive.
And then the last criteria is that it does not primarily earn from production music. I believe less than 25% of the earnings have to come from production music. Mm-hmm. So basically that's how it works. And in order to do so, I'm going to actually navigate to an area of the site so you can actually see it live. But if you wanted to leave a standing order, you simply go to the secondary market, you select the standing orders tab. You can see all existing standing orders that are left right now, so you can kind of get a sense of what people are leaving. And you simply select place new standing order. And for non-all access members, you'll be limited to only term advance assets at the moment. And here you say, basically, here's the minimum dollar age of the catalog I'm looking for. Here's the last 12 months. Here's the multiple over the last 12 months earnings that I'm willing to pay for that catalog, and here's the amount total that I'm willing to allocate towards this. And again, for non all access members, that total will be limited to 25,000 dollar catalogs or less. So that is basically the newest feature in terms of the standing orders. Anything you want to add about standing orders, Ryan, just in terms of what we've seen? And I think the returns that we've seen some investors get from standing orders have been a little bit maybe higher than the average on the auction house, or
Yeah, so and because I can see it like from the investor's point of view that it can be kind of harder to wade into the area since you are investing kind of blind, so to speak, and you're not seeing the financial information beforehand or the like who the artist is, that sort of thing. But the criteria that we've set has worked really well, and I believe you're getting, I think it's around 5% more return from the standing order section of the marketplace. So there's certainly our filtering criteria certainly is picking the superior catalogs, and the investors are getting them at a better price to be able to generate that extra return. And you're not having things where you're emotionally bidding against items for other investors. You're not getting caught up in an auction, that sort of thing. So we are able to see some alpha or some excess return over our auction house.
okay.
Sorry.
All right, great. So that's the standing orders component. The next thing that we added is some offer controls on the secondary market. So for those not familiar, the secondary market is the area of our site where we essentially relist any asset that was acquired on the Royalty Exchange platform originally, whether through an auction or otherwise. And basically, you can go to the secondary market and scroll through the assets there and leave an offer to the owner of that asset to buy it from them. And what we've seen is that those offers are there's a wide range of what those offers are, right? It's people testing this, just to understand the marketplace, what are the going prices for things, that sort of stuff. So if you're someone who owns an asset on the secondary market, we've added a feature that allows you to set a minimum offer for what you'd even consider. Okay, so but basically what that means is that I can say, okay, I might have a list price that's this much, which is what I'd like to get for it. I may consider offers less than that, but I won't consider anything below this particular floor. By setting that up, it basically means that I, as the investor, I won't even see the offer if it comes in below that minimum, and it just kind of cuts down on the number of emails and communications and things that I need to respond to as an owner of the asset. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's set to default that it's 50, that the minimum is set by default to 50% of the net break-even price. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically that's how this works. So again, you can see this is a blog post that you can go to in our investor resources section where you can kind of read through all the details of exactly how it works. I'm not going to take too much time to walk through it because it's pretty self-explanatory. So that's that one. Again, any questions, go ahead and leave them for us and we'll go ahead and answer them. Another one that we added, and this is for, I think, really an interesting one here, is the filtering of the secondary market assets. In fact, I'm just going to go to the secondary market instead of the blog post to show you how this one works. So what we found is a lot of new investors tend to make their first bids on assets in the secondary market, okay? So auctions are something that people participate in, they watch, right? They'll kind of see a sense of what's happening, but the first time they actually overtly try to make an offer for an asset, it's within the secondary market here. And as you can see, one of the reasons is there's far more assets available to review and make offers on in the secondary market than there are on the auction house. You might have 3 to 5 auctions at a particular time. As you'll see here, there's 185 assets in the secondary market that you can place a bid on. Problem is, not the problem, but the challenge for some is that it might be hard to find exactly the one you want. So what we've done is added these really great filtering features that lets you sort by different components. Right now it's sorted by most recently added, but let's say you want to sort by highest dollar age instead, right? And you want to limit it also here. So the next filter here is the last 12 months earnings. You only want to see those that have maybe earned between around 16 to say 50,000 in the last 12 months, just based on what your allocation preference is. It automatically, lowers the number. And while you're sorted by highest dollar age, you don't want to see anything under than 6 years dollar age, for instance. Again, it's filtering even further. And then finally, you can go, if you want, you can select by how many offers are made. I'm not going to bother with that one. And then you can limit only to, say, life of rights catalogs. And so you can see now you've gone from 185 to 1. Makes it a lot easier to find the one that's within your parameters. And then you can always adjust your parameters a little bit too if you want to see more options. Okay, maybe I need to be a little more open with what I've done. Here we go. Now, by adjusting those a little bit, I now get 3 more assets that I can consider. So it gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of filtering through the standing orders, basically. So that was that most recent update. Let's see here. I'm going to show, I'll just use the same screen to kind of get to the next one, which is basically the analyst benchmark. What we've done is changed how we calculate this. Most folks, if you're not an all access member, you will not see this analyst benchmark figure. Okay, but what this is actually, Ryan, I'm going to let you jump in here. Why don't you explain a little bit about what the analyst benchmark is, and then if you can maybe quickly talk about the change that we've made to how we calculate that figure.
Yeah, so the analyst benchmark is just a formula that essentially takes into consideration the time remaining on the asset, the last 12 months earnings, or the 3-year average, which is the change that happened. And it kind of comes up with a prorated multiple that you would pay based on that time remaining. And it also factors in the dollar rate. So essentially, it was taking the LTM as the primary input, but with the recent change, we now do the 3-year average or the LTM, whichever is lower, to kind of prorate that multiple based on how much time is remaining in the asset. So if it's less than 10 years, the multiple will scale down.
And can you maybe talk about what was our rationale behind doing so?
So the rationale was behind our CEO, Matt. It's a price that he felt comfortable that he would pay for. He would pay an asset blind, and that means just without seeing the financial data, without knowing exactly, what the performing artist was, that sort of thing, and only taking those factors into him. So if I had went to him and I had said, hey, I have this catalog, it's 5 years old, this is the last 12 months, this is a 3-year average, and this is how much time is remaining on the term, it's a price that he would have felt comfortable with it, and a price that we feel comfortable that investors would have be able to receive an appropriate rate of return. Now, with all that being said, that's certainly not the absolute price, right? There are some assets where you would pay more than that analyst benchmark. There are probably some assets that you would want to pay less as well.
All right. So to summarize, basically, the analyst benchmark is it's the standard by which we develop that figure is the algorithm is basically the same for all. It's not based on an individual assessment of the catalog itself. It's just here's how we do it. Here's the formula basically, and we apply it to all assets equally, just to kind of provide a general center line guidance and around here's kind of where you might want to start thinking about where you want to place a pricing estimate around it, just to give you a little bit of a compass point, basically, right? And what we did was the multiple that we applied to it, instead of just on the last 12 months earnings, we applied it to either the last 12 months earnings or the average of the last 3-year earnings, whichever is lower. And that was done essentially to account for any sudden spikes in the last 12 months that might not be sustainable, that would somehow skew where that figure lies. And then finally, to your point, Ryan, that's based primarily on dollar age and multiple, right? But there's also little tweaks that you can make to it where you want to take a look at source of earnings, or you want to take a look at more closely at trend rates. And that allows you to kind of maybe adjust a little bit above or a little bit below that figure based on some of the more specific attributes of the asset. So anyway, that was a change that we made there. And then finally, let me go back to our listings here. What I'll show you is on the auction house, we have a couple auctions live right now. I wish we had one that was waiting opening bids, but the last change we made that I'll talk about quickly was if you were to place the opening bid on a catalog, let me just scroll down first here. In an auction, if you were to win an auction, there are buyer's fees, marketplace fees, we also call them, where you basically pay 1% of the closing price or $500, whichever is greater, which covers the one-time cost of us administering your royalties after the auction is over and after you've acquired the asset. We administer those payments. There's a cost to that. We only charge once at the closing of the auction to cover that activity going forward. The point is, if you were to place the opening bid on an auction, the first bidder on an auction, and you ultimately win that auction, that price is waived, basically. So that is the last of the five, the five updates that we made. So I'm going to stop sharing now. And let's see here. We got a couple. Actually, I'm going to address some of the questions that came in because these questions are related to what we just covered. And then we'll get into the ones that were left in advance. So a couple quick questions. First of all, it's related to the all access membership. If I pay the $5,000 membership fee, does that mean I can place standing orders less than 25,000? And do you anticipate non-members ever be able to make standing orders for life of rights assets? Is I think how I'm reading that. So basically, the question is twofold. One, yes, if you were an all access member, you can basically have unlimited standing order options, right? You can place an order for far more than 25,000, less than 25,000. You can place standing orders for life of rights and term advance. No restrictions. All right, that's the benefit of the premium membership tier. Do we anticipate non all access members ever being able to make life of rights deals? Potentially. I think right now this is just a test because it is because this is sort of an automated investing feature. It's something that we want to ensure people aren't going to somehow accidentally acquire things they didn't want to acquire. That can cause a lot of agita and administrative processes. So by sort of restricting it, it allows people to kind of get used to the idea of it and how it works and make some adjustments without really getting into a place where it might be beyond what they expected to do. So if we find that it's not a problem and that people are happy with it and there aren't any points of confusion and whatnot, it's always possible that we might expand it further. But for now, this is the limit that we have to it. Also, it's worth noting that this was originally a benefit of our premium membership tier. It is something that we want to ensure that our premium members do have, enjoy some broader benefits of membership, and this is kind of a component of that as well. So those are the ways I'll answer that question. Next question, again, it relates to the all access membership fee, which is that it's a $5,000 one-time fee and then a yearly fee of, I think you're asking if it's around $100-ish. I don't think that's what the yearly fee is. I think it's, actually, I don't know off the top of my head exactly what the annual fee is afterwards. It's not $5,000. It's a $5,000 one-time. That's an initiation fee and the first year membership. And I think it's somewhere around $1,000 a year after that. Do either of you have any more information on that?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. All right. So that's basically how it works. And once you're a member, you don't have to repay that initiation fee on an annual basis. Okay, so those were the questions that related to what we've been talking about. Now let's switch to some of the questions that we were left in advance. Let's see here. First one is, what type of controls does Royalty Exchange have in place to provide assurance to investors that the royalties collected are captured accurately, completely, and reported timely? Great question. So let's focus on what we primarily do, which is collecting and administering payments that are for royalties that are public performance royalties as collected and distributed by the public rights organizations, the PROs. Basically, we act as the facilitator of the payments from the distributor, the PRO, to the investor, right? We're just facilitating that. We don't conduct regular audits of them necessarily. It's not like something that we do as a matter of course, but as the administrator of those payments, we have a record of how those payments are being made over time, quarter to quarter or month to month, as the case might be. And if anything seems out of place, we're able to make inquiries on your behalf to make sure that there's nothing missing or anything that we should know in terms of an adjustment in those payments. So we can definitely do that, but it's not like we do it automatically. It's usually only when we notice that there's something somehow off. And basically, each of the PROs have their own processes for how you might dispute a payment or ask for additional detail and whatnot. And we have to basically abide by those rules. They have them listed. We've got links to them if you'd like to see them. We're happy to share them if that's of interest. It's not something that comes up an awful lot. Rob, do you have anything you want to add to this point here? Because you're the one who's a little more point on those things.
Yeah. I'd say externally, our relationships with ASCAP and BMI, we have the insight and we work with these folks every day. So we're able to get answers oftentimes pretty quickly just based on working with these folks, on hundreds of deals that we've done externally. To add a piece on the internal controls, So what our accounting agreement requires us to collect the payment. Once we've collected the payment, we have to get the payment out to our investor within 30 days. Now, we have an internal benchmark of 10 days. It's like that's really what we're striving for. And I think over the last 4 or 5 months, we've been hovering somewhere around the 8-day mark. And really, our service is collecting the payments from the distributor, passing them through to the appropriate parties, and then, you know, like you said, we see all the data, so we can notice if something looks a little funky and address that at that point.
All right, great. Next question we have here is that I'm interested in the opportunity to share various rights and revenue streams from a single catalog with a variety of buyers, i.e. digital streaming carved out, licensed, mechanical, physical, etc. So different ways of answering that question. Basically, on terms of sharing it with a variety of buyers, that is not something that we typically facilitate. Okay, we are a one buyer, one seller format. All right. Once you start having multiple buyers, all trying to buy parts of the same asset, that becomes sort of a security. Once it's a security, now you're talking about the SEC, and a lot of the regulations and other types of rules apply, which makes it far more difficult to do and far more costly as well. So that's why we stick to one-to-one type of arrangements in our marketplace. Now, we have done some limited deals where we call them private they're private syndicates, but it's not our term. It's pretty much what they are. They're private placements, basically, where accredited investors can share shares of a single catalog. We've done, I think, 3 of them. They're very rare. If it comes up and we can do it, we will, but it's not something that we seek out a lot. They are take a lot of time to do, and it's very limited as to who can actually participate in them. So it's not something that you see from us very often. Typically, the exchange is going to be a one buyer, one seller kind of situation. Now, in terms of the different types of royalty rights, yes, we can and have done auctions where you'll see, here's an auction for the public performance royalty that's paid to the songwriter, and then the same catalog will come up and it's the publisher's share of that same catalog. Those you will see, but again, there's still one buyer, one seller as those appear. So that's how that works. Anything to add there, Rob or Ryan? You don't have to, but if you got something,
no,
jump in.
That covers it.
I feel like I'm doing all the talking today. All right. Can you rate the possibility of another auction for a band like Dire Straits? Why do most of the listings seem to be hip hop? Good question. So 2 ways of answering that question. One, in terms of the types of artists and the types of genres that you'll see on the platform, hip hop is certainly a very large and very active genre in general. And I think that's reflected in our marketplace, right? It's one of the biggest genres and most active genres of music there is today right now. So that's one of the reasons why you'll see so much of it on our platform. However, I will say that overall, we've always had other types of genres on the marketplace, and I think right now we're seeing a lot more diversity just as a result of the fact that the marketplace is expanding and there's more artists aware of what we're able to provide to them. We recently had a heavy metal catalog from Slipknot that was really, really popular. Evanescence, which is more of like an alt rock band, was up recently. We've had a lot of country in the last couple of weeks, a lot of country music catalogs, that kind of stuff. I know we have upcoming a very classic 70s, 80s band. I'm not going to tell you who. Mm-hmm. Take an eye out for that one. I'm particularly very excited about it just because I'm the only one at the company that was alive when the songs came out that we're about to sell. So it's going to be very exciting. So yeah, we've got a lot more diversity in genres coming. Now, if by you say another auction for a band like Dire Straits, if you mean the private syndicate, I'll refer to my prior answer, which was basically that, yes, we don't do very many of the private syndicates. Dire Straits was a private syndicate, so it's a little bit of a different type of format. So that's what I got there. Rob, Ryan, anything you want to?
Yeah, and kind of the way I think about it is, you know, the vast majority of deals we do are songwriter PRO royalties. And in genres like rap and country, you have a lot of collaborators in a song. So a lot of different folks are going to get songwriting credits. Now, typically when you look at classic rock, a lot of the times it's the band members who are selling the royalties, and there's only 4 or 5 of those folks who even have a songwriting credit. Now, I don't have the, you know, that this is all the specific numbers on it, but I would suspect that there are just more collaborators who get songwriting credits on a hip hop track, on a country track, because those are not necessarily the touring musicians that you see performing and then recording the albums.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, and then let's see here. Actually, before I get to I want to address ones that came in during the call, because I think this applies to what we just talked about, which is that the question is that she's interested in catalogs of specific singers. How do I find what I'm looking for? Tough one.
I think, yeah, I mean, the best area would probably be the secondary market, just because on the auction house, it's hard for us to choose which singers and whatnot. It's really our stream of sellers that are going to make that decision. So secondary market's going to be the best option for that.
Yeah, you can scroll through the secondary market. I don't believe there's a search function that allows you to search by performer at this time. That might be coming soon, but it's not a very common request. So it's not top of the development list at the moment, but it's certainly something I could see us adding in the future.
Yeah, a lot of times the secondary market listings are tagged, and sometimes there's an artist that'll be tagged on that, and I think maybe if you just click that tag, that'll give you other
right. The tags aren't dynamic. It's just there so you can identify the individual asset, but if you click the tag, you're not going to get a filtered list of others with that same tag. Not at this time.
Got it.
Okay. So yeah, a tough one. And it's basically, I have to also want to reiterate what Rob was talking about earlier, and that the people that we work with are generally not the performing artists. We generally work with the songwriters that sort of contribute to those tracks. Okay, so it's going to be really hard because to find a singer saying, "Hey, would you like to sell your royalties on our platform?" Because we have investors looking for them. They're not the ones that we're generally working with. We're working with one of the 3 to 6 songwriters that also contributed to our own royalties for whatever reason on that song, and that kind of creates a layer between what you're looking for and what we're able to offer. So basically, just keep an eye on the announcements as we come out with new listings on the auction house, and see if any of them strike your fancy, and go from there. All right, Rob, this is one for you. Is there an attorney review period to look over agreements before the official transfer of money? Assuming, of course, he's talking about once acquiring an asset.
Yeah, actually, our standard purchase agreement is available right now online. It's incorporated as a part of our terms of use. So you can go on there. It's linked at the bottom of every one of the pages on our website. So you can just go in the terms of use, find the link for the standard purchase agreement. If you have an attorney, you want to take a look at it. Certainly would prefer and recommend that you have that reviewed before you bid, because we are strict on our timelines post auction. So basically, the terms of use say, hey, by bidding, you're agreeing to the terms of the standard purchase agreements.
Yes, I'll reiterate that. It's really important that you kind of get your ducks in a row before you start taking overt action on the bidding platform, because these things do move. Well, I say relatively quickly. It's a couple of days, but when we're talking about lawyer reviews and whatnot, days is actually rather quick, right? But the point being is that there's a seller here as well. We can't hang. One of the services we provide is getting away from the more traditional process within the music business when it comes to catalog sales of the delay, right? These things can bog down for weeks and months and whatnot, and that's actually counterproductive, and it actually lowers the value of the catalogs. And so we're trying to avoid that, basically. So that's why that's there. There's plenty of time to look at it before you place your bids. Same thing on the secondary market. There's even more time since there's no auction countdown. Do all that before you start actually committing to an offer or a bid. Otherwise, it can get a little bit more difficult. All right, I got one last question here in the Q&A that I'm going to answer. So if anyone else has any questions, please type them in before we get to the last question here. So basically, the last question is, once I pay for a membership, the All Access membership, can I take advantage of the benefits immediately, or is there a waiting period? No, you can take advantage of them immediately. In fact, what we'd offer many folks is that once an auction is closed and you receive your congratulations, you've won, here's your marketplace fee, invoice and whatnot, we offer you right then and there the ability to sign up for All Access membership to have those fees immediately waived. There's also a 30-day money back guarantee. You can, if you test it out for 30 days. If you don't like it, get a refund. So long, and tell me if I'm wrong on this one, but I believe that if you actually do win an auction and actually do take advantage of the waived marketplace fees, once you've received a real benefit from the membership, you can't then say, oh, 30-day money back guarantee. It's like you're kind of the member now. But if you don't take advantage of any of it, if you're not finding it any useful, if you're not getting anything out of it, after 30 days, you can get your money back if it's not what you're looking for. So that's the answer to that. Great. We got some other questions coming in here. From an artist perspective, what's the benefit of having their royalties purchased by a platform investor over a record label who would admin and actively work their catalog? That's a great question. So you're right. The investors on our platform are more silent, passive investors, okay? They're not working the catalog. They don't know how to work the catalog. They don't have the desire to work the catalog. But what you're doing is that because we're working with fractional shares here, we're working with, this is the songwriter share of this particular royalty. The other shares, the other royalty streams of that same song are already owned by the record label or the publisher, and they already have a financial interest in admitting and working those songs. So what you're doing is you're investing alongside those others that are already financially incentivized to continue to work the catalog. There's no need to have to do it yourself. So as an artist, whether you sell it to the investor or not, that activity is already taking place. You've already got that support, basically, from the music business, whose job it is to do those things. So you don't need another partner doing it, gumming up the works. What you're basically getting is an investment, an injection of capital from an investor who's not going to weigh in on, providing you notes on what you should be doing with your music or trying to like place it in other areas where they're not good at it. It's not their job. They're basically providing capital and leaving you alone. And the best part that I'll just add to this one last point is that any music you make in the future, this investor has no say over or influence on. They're only buying an interest in the music you've already made. You as an artist collect that capital. You can make new music in the future with no one involved telling you what to do. Okay, it's a little bit more freedom. Whereas in the traditional area, you might get an advance from a label. You could use that, but then they're going to have a little more of a say in how the music's released or how it's created or what it sounds like and so on. So it's a little bit of a different system. So I hope that answers your question.
I was also going to jump in. I mean, I've seen there's a couple of catalogs where either there is a match available and the label actually won't exercise that match. And I'm assuming from that, in most cases, that the investor is actually paying a higher price than the label would. And I've actually seen catalogs go for a higher price than what the label has offered the songwriter. So, or the songwriter or performing artist, whatever it may be. So there's multiple cases where our investors are willing to pay more for these assets than the actual label or publisher. And a lot of that is too, because like before we really came into this space, a lot of this was kind of backroom deals. And there wasn't a bidding process or an auction, right? It's just like, hey, Sony's going to, X singer, like, hey, we're willing to offer you this, but there's no one willing to one up them like on our platform, that sort of thing.
Great point. Okay, another question here says about 2 years ago, you launched an actual fund managed by Royalty Exchange for a specific catalog purchase. I invested, but I've not heard anything about how that turned out. So I can't read this last sentence. So is the money I contributed, where is it now? I believe that is referring to Royalty Flow and the M&M royalties purchase. That's how I'm interpreting this question.
Yeah, all that. I was going to say all that's been returned. Like we never got to the process where we took that money.
Right, exactly. So there was a process where we basically formed like an affiliate. What's the word? I guess like a spinoff company. Another company, not Royalty Exchange, called Royalty Flow. That company was going to be a company that the company itself was going to acquire large assets, large catalogs from other artists. And by investing in Royalty Flow, you would then earn dividends based on the performance of how the catalogs that it acquired did. Essentially, it's very similar to what we see now with the public company in London, Hypnosis. It was basically the same model, except it wasn't a public company. It was going to be a public company, but it was not done under a traditional going public model. It was gone through a Regulation A plus startup model. Not important, but basically that was the intent of doing so. The effort, because it was going through that Regulation A model, fell through once NASDAQ and some others changed up some rules. Because it never actually completed or closed the process, anyone who had committed to buying shares in it if it had been completed, just had their money back to them. It was just sort of held. We never even had it. It was just held, and then it kind of just went back to them.
Yeah, and it was held through a brokerage firm, right? It's not like it
Exactly.
came to us. We never got to that stage. It was held through a
Right.
brokerage firm, Folio.
Exactly. So hope that answers your questions. If you for some reason think that you haven't received what you're supposed to receive, please reach out separately. We'll track that down. But I'm fairly certain that I mean, everyone's gotten their held money returned to them some time ago. All right. Next, I noticed that there are items on the secondary market with no list price. Why is there no price listed on some items? Excellent question. I'll start. Ryan, jump in if you want. But basically, the list price is something that is set by the owner of that asset. And so we don't set it. The individual owners have to take the time to actually set a list price. And in doing so, there's a couple consequences of that, right? One, by setting a list price, you're kind of saying that, hey, I am actually interested in selling this if you were to meet that list price. And because we have some of these automated investing tools that connect to the assets in the secondary market, if I set a list price and that asset matches a standing offer that meets that list price, that sale is automatically happening, okay? So some folks might not want to sell their catalog at all. They don't want for their catalog to match and automatically be approved for a standing order. So they don't set a list price, or if they do, they set a very, very high list price where it's like, sure, I'll sell it if you're going to offer me 5 times what it's worth or something like that, right? So that's why many just don't have a list price. It's just they intend to hang on to the catalog, or they just haven't gotten around to it yet. Ryan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, exactly what you said there, Anthony. But I wouldn't discourage that or have that discourage you from making an offer on it, right?
Exactly.
The seller is still going to receive that offer, and if it's something that they find acceptable, they'll certainly agree to it. It's just that they haven't gotten around to it, or maybe they're buying this for income and they're not really, actively looking for offers. But it doesn't mean that someone, there's a right price for every seller. So I would just keep that in mind when scanning that.
Okay, great. We have another question here about All Access membership, which says, I don't see on the website where I can pay for the membership fee so that I can participate in the standing orders purchases. Well, let me help you. Let me share my screen real quick so you can see where you can find this. And we might need to do a little better job of making that more available. So basically, this is our website. If you're on the Investors tab, if you go to the menu, go to Investors. This is sort of the main, our sort of pitch to investors. And you scroll down, you're going to see All Access Membership, and there's a button here that says Explore the Membership. You select that, and then you're going to be on the All Access Membership page. This will detail all the benefits that it provides. You can really look in a little bit greater detail about each and every one of them. And then, of course, once you are fully educated, you then can join All Access from this button on the very bottom. Here you go. Here's the answer to the question before. It's apparently the initiation fee plus membership is $4,997 and then $997 a year after. So that's how you may join. We also have, if you're looking at certain areas, you can find links to this, like say in the auction house. If you wanted to place an offer, you'll see we've mentioned these closing fees. And if you want to be an office member, you can access it from there as well. It goes to the same place basically. And I don't want to spend too much time scrolling out, but now that I'm thinking about it, let's see. I think there might be even a link in the secondary market somewhere. Oops, that's the wrong link. If there's not, we should definitely add one so that if you want to. Oh yeah, so if you go into standing orders and you actually want to try to place, well, my account is a standing order account, so I can't actually demonstrate this. But if you were to go to place a standing order from the secondary market and you tried to do in a way that was not allowed to you at your level of membership, doing so would pop up a notice saying you need to be an All Access member, and with a link then how you can do so. So that's how those would work. Hope that helps. Let me know if you still don't have any questions. If you have any questions after the call, if you're still trying to find some of these things, always email us, investors@royaltyexchange.com, and we'll get that answer for you. So hope that helps. Okay, another question here. Is there a good reference source for market value of items, similar to a stock exchange? Somewhere I can gauge the value of an item before presenting an offer.
Yeah, so I mean, that's going to be our benchmark, our analyst benchmark in the secondary market. I know it is only available to, just like a subscription to an analyst recommendation for stocks. It is only available to our All Access members, but the analyst benchmark is kind of like a starting point. And then, with every investment, you may have your starting point, but you always need to do more to find out, do you want to pay more? Do you want to pay less? Is it fairly valued? That sort of thing. So I always encourage our investors to do some more diligence on their investments.
Right. And then that's on the secondary market. In terms of the auction house, I think that's more of a real-time exploration of offers, right?
Yeah,
Same idea.
and again, we do offer that. We have our cash flow table in our model, and you'll see your theoretical IRR if it is above 3-year dollar age. Again, that's a starting point. You can compare assets that use the same system of grading each asset against each other. But again, develop the model's only taking the past and extrapolating it into the future, right? It's not forecasting change in the royalty streams other than what's seen in the past. So you do want to kind of do your own due diligence, your own research, your own modeling.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hope that helps. And we are trying to, this is one of the areas that we're really doing a lot of development work around, is trying to increase the visibility and the transparency and the education around how to evaluate assets in the platform. We've been around long enough now where we have a history of transactions, not just in transactions, but we also are administering payments kind of going forward. So we are working very, very diligently on trying to aggregate all that data and surface it in a way so that as new assets are added to the marketplace, whether it's on an auction or a secondary market, you'll be able to see more at a glance sort of, I think rating is the wrong word, but I'm going to use that for now because I can't think of a better one. Sort of a rating that kind of gives you a sense, okay, this asset appears, this is where this asset sits compared to the average of all the assets that we've done before. And it gives you a little bit of a better sense of maybe how you might evaluate it. And so there's a lot of this coming in the weeks and months ahead, where we are working hard on it right now. So I hope eventually that'll help. Okay, a couple more questions here. One is, what is LTM? Great question. LTM means last 12 months, right? It's the last 12 months earnings of the asset. All right, so we don't want to say year because that could be calendar year. So in the last 12 months, this is how much the asset has earned. And typically an investor would base a price on a multiple of the last 12 months. So I am willing to pay 5 times its last 12 months earnings to own this asset. That's part of how you evaluate what you want to bid an asset for. Ryan, why don't you jump in a little bit on that as well, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up there. It's just the last 12 months royalties that it earned. And yeah, like you said, a lot of people just bid off of that multiple or bid off of that amount using some sort of multiple. So I think you nailed it.
And the multiple being just a little bit about how the consequence of that, right? So yeah, if I bid in 5 times the last 12 months, I'm sort of confident that it's going to continue earning around that same amount for at least the next 5 years or more. Is that an accurate way of putting it?
That's a great point. Yeah. So, I mean, a great way to look at it is if you just do 1 divided by the multiple, that's a yield you can expect to receive based on that multiple, right? So it's a quick, easy trick to kind of get your yield that you're going to receive. So like 1 divided by 5 is 20%, right? So the last 12 months yielded 20% based on what you're going to pay for it. Again, yeah, it's just what a lot of people use in the industry to kind of come up with a price multiple. So
okay, great. Yeah. All right, another question here is, in the information about the All Access membership benefits, it refers to music royalties having a big tax advantage that many investors don't know about. What are those advantages? Happy to answer that question. Rob, would you like to provide a quick disclaimer about our status as tax advisors or lack thereof?
Yeah, here comes our weekly, I guess now monthly disclaimer. Obviously we can't give you tax advice. Everyone's portfolio is different. Everyone's tax situation is different. What we can do is just say, in general, we have had investors, and there are options available to them on how they amortize a purchase of a intellectual property royalty stream. There may even be ways that you can look into getting capital gains treatment on it. But again, those are all specific questions to your portfolio, to your situation that you need to check with your own tax advisor on how that works. Now, we do have some general articles on our blog that talk about that, so we can certainly point you to those. That Anthony would be able to grab those.
Yeah.
Not now, but certainly they're there on the blog, and I think you can probably even search tax, and that can point you in a little better direction than I'm allowed to give in this aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what Rob said, there is a, you know, capital gains versus regular income. There's also some amortization potential there as well, and that I think we do have an article on. I'm having some challenges trying to talk, type, and search all at the same time. But basically, if you were to go to in fact, I'll make it even easier. If you email me directly at investors, or us rather, investors at royaltyexchange.com, if you want to see that article, I will point you to the post once I find it offline here, and send that to you directly.
Yeah,
There is a public post that you can read through that kind of gives you the overview.
And like the basics of it is essentially you can amortize your purchase price against the royalties you receive to lower your taxable income on those received royalties. The posts can kind of go more into the actuals.
Exactly. It's just I'm having a hard time finding it at the moment while I'm walking and chewing gum at the same time here. So that's the answer to that one. So let's see here. Are there any other questions that anyone has that we'd like us to address today before we end our call? So going once, going twice. Okay. Well, listen, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always been a pleasure to answer all your questions. I love seeing the engagement and the interaction. Again, we do hold these monthly. So the next one will be around the 9th of July. Thank you, Joel. And we will have a replay that goes out, so you guys can replay the video if you want to check any details or whatnot. And again, as always, investors at royaltyexchange.com. Happy to answer any of the questions you have. Hope to see you on the platform, acquiring some good assets. And that's it. I'll talk to you all again soon. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.